There we go.
All right.
Much better. All right, good deal, man. How's it going?
Going well, man. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. All right, now that we got you on here, do a little intro. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm Ron with Roots of Death Metal. My guest today is Adam from He Is Legend, and yeah, man, we'll just start right into it. First off, pleasantries.
Yeah.
Weekend,
Man,
everything going good? Not too bad. Gonna take the family to go see some pro wrestling tomorrow, so. Well, yeah, we'll just dive into the gear portion because I'm sure that's why a lot of people are on here anyway. So how long, well, first off, I know you're an ESP guy. How long have you been with ESP officially?
Well, I've been playing those guitars since probably 2002, and I just went to like our local music store and I bought one. Really felt like all the guitars that I played by them at that early age were really consistent. Like you could just go into a music store and pick one up off the wall, and they were really solid and played really well. And then obviously, like at the time, so that was probably 2002 at the time. Like just seeing Steph from Deftones play those ESPs was like a big inspiration, and obviously Metallica as well. But then I guess like officially endorsing them was probably like 2014, 2015, something like that.
Gotcha. Nice. Long, and for the long haul.
There's plenty of awesome guitar companies out there, especially these days. But I just feel like for the price point, there's something about those LTDs, man, like the 1000 series. I absolutely love them. They're so solid. And of course I do like a few upgrades, like I swap the pickups out usually, but they come with Seymour Duncans a lot of times, which are just, I mean, that's badass. So it's like, really don't have to do much other than like throw some strap locks on there, put my strings on there, and they're pretty much good to go.
Right. I've got one Eclipse myself, which I've been a long time ESP lover as well. I can't even remember what year it would have been. I want to say 2005, 2006. It's one of the only times I've seen a guitar brand do a commercial on cable TV. It was the most random thing. It was an ESP commercial, and I specifically remember Strapping Young Lad, like a clip from the Love music video being part of the commercial, and I thought strapping was sick at the time, and well, still do, but that was kind of what really hooked me on there. And then I saw Metallica plays them too, and just so and so.
I mean, there's a lot. Again, there's a lot of awesome guitar companies, but something about that pointy ESP headstock just looks like a goddamn weapon. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe the biggest reason for me was probably Steph from the Deftones. I thought his sound was just super awesome, and he's still with them. So that's a testament to that company. And I honestly, like, I've had like, different luthiers throughout the years, and anytime I take the guitars to them, they comment on how like just solid and awesome the guitars are. The longer I play them, the more I really appreciate them. So I'm really happy to.
Their QC across the board is it's kind of hard to beat, really. I mean, just for like walking in and grab one off the shelf at any price point, it's kind of hard to find another company that's as consistent as they are, and features for the price points like you mentioned.
I was just saying, yeah, I agree, dude. Is my connection okay? Is it slipping in and out? But
Oh no, you're good
another
now.
cool thing about them that I really appreciate, or about any company that I work with, is so obviously they're a big company and they could totally kind of just like, you know, kind of be rehashing shit that they've been doing since, you know, I guess the early 2000s, but they don't do that. They don't like rest on their haunches. They just like keep their ear to the streets and keep evolving. Like every year there's something where I can tell, I guess specifically Tony, he's really like involved in the scene, and he's I guess a really important factor in those guitars constantly evolving every year to meet the needs of like the more modern player. I feel like some other companies, who I won't mention, are just, they've got a big name and they kind of like, they don't really care about improving their stuff. It's just like, well, people are going to buy this for the name, so we don't really have to do anything. And that's just, I don't, I like working with companies like ESP and Mesa Boogie. They just, I feel like they keep their ear to the streets, and they build equipment for the professional musician.
Yeah. Right. No, they definitely seem to pay attention to their customer base pretty well, I'd say. And funny enough, you should mention, kind of hinting at other brands. There are some people sounding off in the comments section right now asking about different brands. As I say, there's very few that kind of keep their ear to the ground. We'll just leave it at that without calling anybody out.
Can use their information and their own experiences. Like, this guitar is $3,000, $5,000, and it plays and sounds very mediocre. And that you'll pick up like a, you know, even a $600 ES or LTD sometimes, and it's just like, this shit sounds fucking awesome. So.
Right. Somebody else asked, what is the typical scale length that you gravitate towards? But I think you kind of like a lot of the Eclipses are typical Gibson
really
scale, aren't they?
And like, their 25.5 is great, and that, you know, I'm not super particular about, I'm not like against any of that stuff, but I really gravitate towards the 24.75, which is what all the Eclipses are in. It just, I think because like my first real guitar when I was a kid was have you ever heard of a Gibson, the Paul? That was like my first, we bought it used, but that was like my first like real guitar. So it's just, since I kind of grew up playing that, you know, that scale, that's what I'm most comfortable with. It also just, it feels like, you know, a little bit more rock and roll when you're doing like bends and stuff than like, but again, 25 is a fucking awesome scale length as well. And I really don't get super particular with it. I just feel more at home with the 24.75.
Right. And I mean, you're probably like me, where it doesn't really bother you too bad to put a little bit heavier string gauge on there.
That's
if exactly need be.
In fact, I have a custom gauge that we get from Dunlop, which is, it's honestly, it's a little ridiculous for, I would say, like 99% of people. But I my right hand, I pick so hard that it just, I feel like it really, I don't know, it just resonates with the way that I play. I used to play like Ernie Ball 10 to 52s and standard or drop D or drop C, and that, you know, was okay for a while. But I would always notice, like, man, I wish I could kind of really dig it. I'm kind of bottoming the 3 low strings out as hard as I pick. So I basically, now we play a set in drop C that's like 70, 48, 36, 18, 14, 11. So it's basically a set of 11s on the high strings, which is normal feeling for people. But when if they ever play like the low strings, they're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" It's a little ridiculous. But I appreciate it. I like it. It resonates with the way that I play. So
a
yeah,
70
I can really
for
like
a C,
dig
huh?
in, like
Damn.
when you hit, there's like I don't know, something about just when you actually are hitting those low strings or fretting chords or anything, you can hear every like I don't know, it feels like the lower you tune down, like, and if you're lighter, lose some of the definition and like vocal quality of the chord. It just kind of just sounds like, but yeah, I totally, when people play my guitar and they're like, "What the fuck?" I totally understand. It is a little ridiculous. I just pick really hard, so that's what it
Yeah, man. I think the only time I messed with a 70 for a low string was like for B slash
that's
like A tuning,
yeah,
which I mean, it felt
fucking awesome.
amazing, but
I mean, B half step away from where we are. So if you had a 70 in B and you're like, "Wow, this feels cool," it's, you know, it's not that far away from so
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody else was asking if you're interested in any baritones, and then somebody else asked about tunings. So you guys, are you guys pretty much always around C?
yeah,
Like
I would
drop C,
say
or
so like our very first record was in drop D. That was back in 2004. But prior to that, we had played in drop C for a while. I think just because that record was a little bit more like rockish stuff, like it felt appropriate to tune to drop D. But then after that record and since then, it's been all drop C. And then we do that like the Neurosis tuning where you fucking just you have a 6-string guitar and you just drop the low string to unison with the second string. You know what I'm saying? Like you get octave.
okay. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I feel like Pantera, Zakk Wylde, Neurosis, even Foo Fighters have a song in that tuning, just where you unison the very lowest string with I guess it would be the A string, but it's not, you know, whatever you're tuned to. But the second wound string, you unison that, or the low string.
Gotcha. I've messed around with a similar tuning before, and I mean it's like I guess when you keeping everything in standard tuning, dropping the bottom string down to an A, or when you're a whole step down and doing the bottom to an A, kind of like Mastodon.
We do both. So like we're a whole step down for every string except for the low string, and typically that low string is a C. But then when we do the drop tunings, we'll either drop it to a unison G or we'll drop it to an A, which I love that tuning as well, because then you get A, G, C, F, A, D. But that something about that if you do like palm mutes with that weird I guess chord interval, that A and G, those two low strings, it just fucking the natural dissonance, and that just somehow sounds even heavier than if you were just tuned to like you know, like I guess a drop tuning. Something about that A and that G, it sounds enormous. We use that tuning a lot. I like that tuning. So it's pretty much, I guess, a low rent or old school way of getting like 7-string and 8-string tones out of a 6-string, because I've always been a 6-string player.
Sure. Yeah, no, that is an incredibly addictive tuning. I think I first used that trying to learn like Mother Puncher or something like that by Mastodon. Like it's so ridiculously gnarly sounding, especially if you don't go like a super heavy or like appropriate gauge for that low A, So then you get kind of like that little bit of a string warble going on. Yeah.
Fucking even that Foo Fighters song, Stacked Actors, I don't know if you've ever heard that song, but I think they use like a unison where they just, because they're not playing 7 strings obviously, so they just drop that string. So it can even be used in like I guess a more rock and roll context. It's just I want to say Eagles of Death Metal, or not, Queens of Stone Age maybe. They'll use like tunings like that. But yeah, it's just like you said, it's fun. It's just a fun way to sound heavy as shit.
Yeah, Queens, they do all sorts of funky, weird tunings.
Soundgarden, that's another one that does it in like a rock and roll context. Yeah.
Yeah. What's that one song, 4th of July?
I love that song.
It's a great one.
I was just gonna say we toyed with the idea of covering Mailman, Soundgarden Mailman before. That's a really fucking awesome song. Yeah.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, I love that song.
Sick. Are you still rocking the Mojotone pickups, and are you using those in all your guitars, or?
So I was using them. I'm trying to remember when. Probably since like 2014 or so, somewhere around there. Just like random sets in different guitars, and then they came out with this bridge pickup called the 44 Magnum, and since I tried that pickup, I have put that pickup in every single one of my guitars. It is my favorite bridge pickup of all time. And I've got some of their, like all my neck pickups are like different, because it's, to me, it's not as important as the bridge pickup, but I still use the neck pickup. But I've got a few of their pickups, the neck pickups, in some of my guitars, and they're just those pickups, I've never played one that I didn't like. It's just I really, really love the 44 Magnum, but they are fantastic pickups. I'm sure they endorse, or they have SIG models for the BT Dam dudes, and they're now doing a SIG set for Bill from Mastodon. So I can't recommend those pickups enough. They're absolutely amazing, and they take care to hand make every single one. I actually used to, because they're a local company, they're out in Burgaw, like 30 minutes away. So I used to work there for a while, and just seeing how everything, like the care that's put into everything, is really, really fucking cool. So yeah, they're fantastic pickups.
I remember them being pretty hot output. Aren't they like
21K
or something?
The cool thing about it is like when you hear that could seem like a marketing gimmick, like, oh, let's just build a pickup, it's the hottest fucking thing ever. But because of the way, because I say most of their pickups are kind of gravitated towards like blues and rock and like lighter stuff. So the fact that they have that knowledge and that craftsmanship of like developing these really like professional pure tones, when they make a high output pickup, it's like you get the best of both worlds. Like the palm mutes, like it's like a depth charge, but then you still, when you're playing chords and stuff, it's like this really awesome, I don't know how else to describe it other than like a professional, it's like the difference between top shelf and bottom shelf. Like bottom shelf stuff is fine, but you can a lot of times really taste the difference in like the higher quality stuff and components and gear. But I can't say enough good things about that company and those pickups in particular.
Oh yeah. And with that higher output and everything, I know you're a fan of doing like the split coil mod. With that higher output, output, I bet the single coil tone actually works a lot better, and it's probably a little bit closer to like a legit single coil, or at least that's what I've always
that's correct.
understood.
But what's funny is so we just like we released a new album. We were talking about that on the new album, it's called Endless Hallway. On the new album, every single distorted tone that you hear is the 44 Magnum. And all, like, I'd say 99% of the low tune, like the super low tune stuff, which I want to say there's like 5 or 6 songs on that album that are in those tunings, all of those tones are in single coil. So when you hear like the heavy, super heavy shit, like, and it just kind of blows me away. And for something about like those lower tunings sound awesome in humbucker mode, but something about flipping to that single coil mode, you just get this, like, it's the punch and the articulation that sometimes can get lost when you're tuned down that low. There's just so much definition. And yeah, I just, like I said, I've never had a pickup where when I got it, I was like, okay, fuck, this is going in every single one of my guitars. So, and that Mojotone 44 Magnum that's the pickup for me.
Wow, I never would have guessed that with the single coil tones. That
if you
it
go
makes
back
a lot
and
of
like
sense,
listen
though.
to it, like, it doesn't make sense, because it's like, I think it has to do, it's got to have something to do with the fact, like, you're tuned that low, because it wouldn't really sound the same if you were in drop C or any sort of more normal, not super low tuning. You flip to single coil, it's going to sound like a single coil. But when you're in those super low tunings, you flip to single coil with that pickup, it just, I don't know, it just sounds so aggressive and heavy. And I'm like, palm mutes usually sound terrible on single coils, but like, yeah, if you listen to the new album, to me it sounds super punchy and aggressive and mean. So I'm very, very stoked on that pickup.
It's killer. And you still rocking
Absolutely,
the rectifiers?
It's kind of another thing that I've just really appreciated since I was younger, because like those were like the new metal days, and so everybody was full rectifiers.
Right.
So I've loved them since an early age. I also, though, for that price point, if we're talking about, kind of that dual rectifier price point range, the 5150 is another favorite of mine. I don't own one, but every single time we record, we end up using one, and that is a fantastic amp for all styles, but particularly for heavy stuff.
I had a conversation recently where the 5150 is or the EVH version, PV, doesn't matter. They're kind of just like the ultimate grab and go amp. Like you don't have to boost them. They sound great out of the box. Rectifiers have always been kind of my preference, but at least for my like taste, I always had to run some kind of tube screamer or something in front of them.
I feel the same way. And honestly, even with like a 5150, I've just been playing overdrives through tube amps for so long that I can't get away from it. But to me, you can't really get like that crunchy heavy tone. It's not about gain, because most people aren't putting their gain on fucking 10, whether you're boosted or not. So it's never about not having enough gain. It's more about like the something that happens when you add that layer of, I guess, boost on top of a tube amp, that just like you're right about, the rectifiers definitely sort of need it, unless you're, I guess, playing like more straight ahead rock or like butt rock, but
sure,
which I love that stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, it's I can't, the tone I'm looking for, it can't be achieved without a boost. And I want to say, I feel like that's been happening since like the since the 80s. People have been like putting overdrives in front of that's been the secret for like forever, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. If it wasn't like a Boss SD1, it would be like an MXR 10 band, or something to either shape the EQ or just to slam the front end, or both. Which we've had some talks on here too. You can technically achieve the same thing with a good EQ, or maybe and maybe also a compressor hitting the front end. But for most people, they'd rather just get the overdrive and kind of kill two birds with a stone.
I kind of even prefer a clean tone that's got like a bit of like, maybe it's just because I'm so used to it, but like my ideal clean tone wouldn't be just like dead clean. I would put an overdrive on there, probably, bring back the level of so it's not totally bluesed out, but like even clean tones sound great with like a light bit of that overdrive on there. I don't know. And for going back to the Mesa 5150 stuff, like for anybody that's said like oh I can't do Mesas, I've never liked their sound, or never been able to get them to sound good. I totally understand that, because they are like what you said about the 5150. It's kind of hard to get a bad tone out of a 5150, and Mesas are way more like you have to dial them in just right. But to me, there is nothing heavier than a Mesa tone, like, and it's always kind of been that way for me. I mean, like I was saying, it seems like the palm mute's like I don't know, it sounds like a depth chart. It's like it shakes the air around you. It kind of moves you from the inside. So I've always just loved that stuff, and I love their craftsmanship and attention to detail. I feel like they build stuff with the touring musician in mind, and it's like, if this is going to work for a touring musician, then it's definitely going to work for somebody who's playing at home or in the studio. So I love that company, and I've been with them for a long time.
Oh yeah. Which models are you gravitating towards more these days? Like
that's my favorite. They're all sick. I have an older, like the middle I guess revisions, the 3-channel triple that is actually my home rig, just because I have 2 multi-watts that I play live. But the multi-watt is absolutely my favorite. Like the even just for, this is going to sound ridiculous, but even just for the mute function on the foot switch and the clean channel, because we actually do like use our cleans live if we're playing like a longer set. That clean channel is fucking unbelievable on that amp. Like I've never heard like a high gain amp that has a clean channel like that. But of course, the gain channels are just, I don't know, I just love that amp. I'm trying to think. I think I got my first multi-watt. I think it was also around 2014 or sometime around then. Love that amp.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah. I had one of the old 2 channels for like a decade.
Wow.
It was a Revision F, and I absolutely loved that amp. I mean, it definitely was finicky, like a 90s amp would be, but yeah, it was killer. And even that one, which of course it's more simplified than the 3-channel ones and the multi-watts. Well, I think that's the real reason people prefer them, is because they were a little bit easier to dial in.
And those are the ones that are like sought after now. Kind of like, I guess there's like folklore around, like a lot of people just think that those older two, which there's some legitimate I guess argument there, but yeah, people are like, aren't those 2 channels, like the certain revisions, going for like super high prices now, like higher than they would normally?
I sold mine for, it was almost 3 or 4 times what I paid for it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's kind of like that.
It's crazy.
Like, Klon thing too, or just there's probably tons of other gear that's like this, where it's like there's like some mythology around it, and then the prices get jacked up. Like the block letter 5150 is another one that like you find those for cheap as shit, and now they're like, people are, you know, charging crazy amounts for those things. So,
which it's been pretty well documented. The 6505s are literally the same freaking amp. Like there's some legitimacy to the 2-channel rectifiers being different from revision to revision. Like some of them have the Mark amp transformers and, you know, things like that. There's technical details. With the PV stuff, it's literally the same thing. They just legally had to change the name. The values of the pots may be different, like noon versus like 1 o'clock, you know, stuff like that. But people just want to glamorize some things, also, I think. Like, I don't know.
Sometimes it's like easier to build like a mythology around this gear is this gear is this, to like kind of chase that or go down that rabbit hole, as opposed to like just focusing on like, well, I should probably just practice more, and like it's like it's easier to, you know, well, if I got the right pedal setup and amp and gear, all the right gear, I chase these different rabbit holes. Like that's how you but yeah, it's whatever. It's a innocent, you know, I guess addiction for, you know, people.
Sure. But yeah, there's free metronome apps out there though. Going back to, you know, boosting amps and stuff like that, what is your pedal board looking like these days? Or do you keep stuff in the rack, or
I would love
what,
to be able to
whatever.
keep stuff in the rack, but I feel like I would want an actual guitar tech out on the road with me if I was doing something like that, just in case anything went wrong. Sometimes I can't even get to my rack while we're playing, so I just keep everything on the board, and basically it looks a lot more complicated than it is, but it's just like the top row on my pedal board is going in front of the amp, and then the bottom row on my pedal board is going into effects loops. So and the only thing in the bottom row is just 2 delays and 2 reverbs that I'll, you know, cut on and off for different parts. But up top, the top row is a tuner, obviously, EVH MXR Phase 90, which is a great fucking fun ass pedal, a Boss OC3, which is an octave pedal. But the trick there, the only reason why, there are definitely better octave pedals out there, but the reason why I choose that one is because it's got a guitar input and a bass input, and I run it through the bass input, which it's a less, it's a little bit more of a subtle octave sound, and then it only affects like the low 3 wound strings. So when you go play leads, like it's not on there. So that's a really kind of fun trick. And that's the only reason why I play that, or consistently use that pedal. And then what the fuck is after that? Boosting with a Maxon 808, which is just a great, from like bluesy stuff to like super heavy shit. That's a great pedal. After that is a clone, which I don't understand why it works so well, but I have that clone set, like, I guess the max on is my main sound. It's on all the time. And then sometimes I'll cut on the clone. I have it set a little bit brighter. And I don't know what, maybe because the max on is on as well. You wouldn't think a clone would do like heavy shit well, but it like I tried a precision drive in the clone's place, and I had to go back to the clone because the precision drive is a great fucking pedal as well, but something about that clone that I have, it's a silver era clone. And yeah, I don't know, it fucking sounds awesome. Also sounds awesome for like, if I'm on the clean channel and I want to like kind of take a bluesier style lead, and it's, that Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of tone is a little bit brighter and snappier. So get a beautiful clean sound, and then you cut that clone on and it just kind of brightens it up and makes it kind of sting a little bit. And then the last thing in the top row is the decimator, which I absolutely love. Honestly, kind of excuse me, can't play without that pedal. The Boss, we used to use the Boss, like way back in the day, we used to use the Boss NS2, and it works obviously, but if we play at like really high stage volumes, the Boss will not like suppress the noise at those higher levels. So the decimator actually will, and it's one knob, so gotta love that. So
yeah, I can speak from prior experience that the NS2, playing like really loud like house shows where you're cramped up against your amp and everything, I had to always max out the settings. And then at that point, it doesn't sustain.
And it still won't
hardly at all.
If you're playing loud enough, and like you said, if you're like like standing right next to your cab, that NS2 will not. I mean, you'll be feeding back like you don't even have a noise suppressor on. So I'm so glad that I got turned on to that decimator, because we're not even like maxed out on that in any way. It's like still at I want to say it's around like 2 o'clock where we have ours set. So you could technically play louder or add more gain and, compensate it with there's still room to go, which, like you said, with the NS2, even when maxed out, completely choked as possible, it'll still like feedback. And yeah, I think it's just a superior noise suppressor. I've heard really good things about that Zool. Have you ever tried that?
I tried. A buddy of mine had the Zool, and I played through his, and it seemed to work fine. I've never owned one. I didn't like the idea of the key input and having to mess with all that. I've got the gate that I use now, which right now I'm running a Kemper, so sometimes I just use the built-in stuff. But if I'm using like real pedals and like overdrives or fuzzes, because I still like analog dirt. The digital stuff doesn't quite get like fuzzes and HM2s and overdrives 100% right yet. It's close, but so when I'm using real pedals, I'll use there's this guy named Michael Klein or Michael Klein Audio. I've got his. It's called the Ball Gag. And well, as a decimator fan, you probably like it. It's just one knob and a toggle switch for either a tighter or more open kind of gate.
Yeah.
And it's got a 4-cable option as well, which I ran it that way for a while. Right now, I'm just doing 2-cable into the front end for the just the extra hiss and everything from the pedals, but. That thing, it works flawlessly.
The noise suppressor thing up there, I guess, there's a decent amount of gates out there. So it really, I guess, honestly, I know plenty of professional dudes that use that Boss NS2. So, really, it just comes down to like what works for you. But you know, I haven't ever, going back out, switching gears real quick to the Overdrive. Have you ever tried Pepper's Pedals Dirty Tree?
I haven't. I know which one you're talking about. I don't have his. The same guy, Michael Klein, and I'm not trying to be a shill or nothing, but he built me a clone of the same, right, you know, like the TC style preamp. And it's kind of like the Dirty Tree, where it's like there's a toggle switch for the TC, and then like, what is it, like between the TC or like the 33 or grind, like the Fortin kind of thing, right?
I've never played any of those that you've mentioned, but I've just heard good things about how they interact with a Mesa Boogie dual rec. So I'm kind of curious about.
Oh yeah.
Someone had one. I'd love to try one out with the dual rec, see how it sounds. One of the kind of tricky things for us, as I was mentioning before, is like I can't just choose an overdrive because our overdrive is on all the time. I can't choose an overdrive that's just good for like the high gain stuff. It has to also sound good with the cleans. So that kind of affects my preference for. That's why I feel like that Max on 808 circuit, like it's kind of a all around, like it sounds good on high gain stuff and clean stuff. I want to say Stevie Ray Vaughan played that circuit for his overdrive. Yeah, the 808.
I believe so.
So I mean, yep, gear shit.
I will say, and I did still have my dual rectifier, like the real one, and then now I have profiles and shit. But I use that TC preamp clone pedal I have with, you know, a real rectifier and profiles, and either way, it just gets that super tight metallic,
yeah, dude,
kind of Meshuggah kind. You know, I mean, it's really fun for like the real chuggy palm mute kind of stuff. Just that metal on metal kind of sound. Yeah, do you know Great American Ghost?
Dude. I talked to
I know Nico,
bit, and then now Grayson is playing with them as well. So they got that's just a fantastic band, fantastic writing, awesome dudes. But yeah, that they sound awesome.
Yeah, that I feel like Nico is kind of like the current king of getting that metal on metal sound. He's a
fantastic
player.
Pretty I wish I've never seen him live, so I'd love to be able to check him out live. But yeah, even on the recordings, you can tell like his hands are great and the tone is great. So like I've always been a fan of Meshuggah's, like palm mute. Those like, to me, that's some of the heaviest, even from back in the day, which it's kind of crazy how technically I feel like they're underrated because they've influenced, like back in the day when they were coming out, they were doing the stuff that's like popular now. They kind of flew under the radar a little bit. Now I feel like they're gaining or getting some of the acclaim they deserve. But god damn, some of those guitar tones on those early records are like absolutely fucking punishing, like punishing still today's standards. And I hear a lot of like Metallica influence in their playing and just, I guess, approach to guitar tone.
I would say I'm trying to remember. I know Frederick and Martin, they would tend to kind of use different things, but it was always either like the Mesa 50 cal or a dual rectifier, and then also like the Marshall valve state.
That is an underrated for sure.
Yeah. And then they both would use, I think Frederick leaned towards the TC preamp, and then Martin, I think, used the TC booster distortion, like what you know Anthrax would use. That other, I mean, the same line, but like just surgical tight machine like
there's
tone.
I guess on Instagram, Frederick, their guitar player, is not like super active on Instagram, but there's like footage of him, I guess, like kind of just testing out amps. And I think one of them he's playing, it might have been like an old school dual rec, but he's just literally just like palm muting on this thing. Like it sounds so fucking hateful, but it's like, I don't know, it makes you smile, I guess. I don't know, it sounds incredible. But yeah, there's something about their like tone and palm muting, specifically on like, because I feel like they've kind of gotten away from a little bit of that, like as their records have progressed. But those early albums, Chaos Fear was my first album by them, and then Destroy, Erase, Improve, and None. Those, just the tone on those albums is, especially for the time that it came out, it's ungodly. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. What would you kind of shifting gears a little bit? Where would you say your inspiration for like the tone that you try to dial in? Like, is it kind of maybe stem from, for some people, it's like their childhood hero, like they want to get James Hetfield's, you know, Justice for All tone, or like Meshuggah, or whoever.
I feel like when I'm shaping my tone and thinking of like what sounds good to me, I am keeping like my guitar heroes in mind. And I guess my biggest ones for the heavy stuff would be Dimebag first. Obviously, I'm not going to do it in any sort of order, but he's the fucking king, obviously. Dimebag, the dudes in Meshuggah, particularly Frederick, and Steph from the Deftones. And a lot of that has to do with just like, I love super aggressive, mean sounding palm mutes, but also like when you're playing chords, it kind of blooms and sounds like really musical. So I'm always trying to, it's tough to do because it's easy to like get one of those things nailed, but to get both of those things like working in unison, it can be kind of tricky. And then for clean stuff, honestly, like Stevie Ray Vaughan was, when I was younger, definitely one of my biggest influences, but I don't, with the exception of like a few moments, I don't really go for his tone because it's just more, he played a Strat, you know, so it's like, it's a bluesy thing. But
sure,
the clean tone on Hysteria by Def Leppard is one of my favorite clean tones that I've ever fucking heard. So that's kind of what, I know that's kind of cheap, but that's kind of what I'm going for. Just a super kind of retro 80s, super clear, sparkly, awesome clean tone. But yeah, I guess Dimebag, Steph from the Deftones, and Frederick from Meshuggah are the three kind of tone idols that I think about when I'm dialing in something, I guess.
Right. You'll laugh, but like a couple months ago, I went down a rabbit hole with like 80s guitar tones as well. And like totally went like Steve Lukather, like you know, like lots of compression and digital reverb and
I fucking love
chorus and
that
all that
shit, man.
stuff.
Especially, I don't know, like, especially because now, like, with recordings, and it makes sense to some degree, but now a lot of recordings are like homogenous. It's like everything is the same. It's the same plugins, the same, everything is the same shit. But back then, like, you know, people had to get a little bit more creative with it, and everybody wasn't necessarily playing the same. Even amp to amp with tube amps, like the shit's gonna sound different. So this just, it seems like there was more like variation of tones going on. Have you heard the fucking, so going back to Def Leppard, I want to say when they were tracking Hysteria, I feel like they were using a Marshall head, but I think they were also using, have you heard of that Rockman? It's like a little fucking box, like a little fucking blue box that you, dude,
I
so
have a bass
those
egg.
things are going for $1 million now, because I guess that sound is kind of being sought after. I'm sure somebody will make a, if they haven't already, will make a plug-in that like duplicates that tone. But I don't know, I just love shit like that. Or doesn't Josh Homme from Queens, he uses like that little PV like practice amp. This is like, what's it called, the Rage, or what's it? The Decade.
He
That's
plays the
it.
Decade.
Um,
Somebody just put out a pedal of that,
okay.
like a pedal version of that amp. I was just looking at it like last week. It's like a pedal that simulates like the preamp, but it also copies the power amp, and you can run like it has like a speaker out from the pedal. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's cool.
That's like perfect. Those two things are perfect examples of things that were like cheap for the longest time, and now they're like super boosted in price. We were picking up a U-Haul trailer one time to go out on the road, and I guess it was like this repair shop. This lady literally just had one of those Decade practice amps sitting there, and I was like, "Is that yours? Is that for sale?" I was like, "Do you know how much that is worth nowadays?" I don't think she even knew what she had sitting there, because you know, it was just, she probably didn't even think about it. I think it was like collecting dust. But yeah, people pay way more than that amp, you know, is worth for those things.
Yeah, the used gear market is wild and wacky place. Yeah, that Rockman, the bass Ace is just some bass headphone amp. I literally like found it just laying in like a back room at the church I was going to when I was a teenager, like just in like the closet of the youth group room or whatever.
Do you play like Boston and Def Leppard licks on that thing? I'll be doing that shit all the fucking time. I'd hook that thing to my belt.
You know, I used to like, I basically used it like a bass distortion for a long time, because it's got like a bass, mid and treble boost, and I would like plug into it and then run like a headphone out and an adapter back into the front end of the amp, and kind of like use it like a pedal, like for like a really like ghetto rig bass distortion.
I mean, hey.
Yeah. It was just ridiculous, but yeah, that's part of the fun, right? I just saw kind of talk about quirky gear choices and Stephen Carpenter. I saw one like within the past week, talking about some of his gear he recorded with on some of those early albums, and it was just like really random stuff, like the 88 preamp, like what a lot of those 80s bands used, and you know, the Marshall 9100 or whatever that, you know, power amp was. I can't remember, but for like an overdrive, he was using a Boss Hyper Fuzz, but on the clean boost setting. And yeah, and I used to have one of those. So I was like, really? Like,
on those earlier
such
albums,
an odd choice.
his tone is awesome, but it's definitely weird as shit. Like it's definitely not like, oh, you're not listening to it and you go like, oh, I know exactly what that is. It's definitely Adrenaline in particular. Like I hear like this, like maybe over the whole album, maybe on all the instruments, but like I hear like this weird like metallic aluminum thing going on. Like it kind of sounds like you're listening to that inside of like an aluminum can, but it sounds fucking bad. But it's definitely fucking weird sounding. Some of the Pantera records have that for me too. Not the aluminum thing, but just like they have this really unique like tonality to the whole record where I guess it kind of transports you to like, I guess now like a nostalgia thing. But I like shit like that, like I said, because everything nowadays sounds or seems to sound so like so much the same, like very homogenized. Everybody's using the same shit, so it's kind of cool to you know, I'm old, so hearing those like older records, it seems more exciting, but maybe it's my mind playing tricks on it. But yeah, just the fact they're using weird shit and everything a little different, just feels more creative.
No, absolutely. And one fun example that I always bring up would be like Slaughter the Soul by At the Gates. They used one of the Blue Stripe PV Supremes, just a solid state. I think it was one of the solid state ones. And they boosted it with, they used an HM2 and a metal zone. Yeah.
Sounds like,
and that, and then just whatever the kind of budget, I don't think it was like bottom bin, but you know, a cheaper Ibanez. And I mean, it wasn't like a crazy expensive rig or anything like that. I mean, it was something a teenager probably could have appropriated at that time. And funny enough, they still had Andy LaRock from King Diamond do a solo on that album, and they're still playing like this like crazy budget gear. I think shit like that's pretty fun.
Awesome,
like fun,
like,
just awesome.
Isn't there like there's a crate amp that's like really popular in the death metal scene? Is it like a something 130 or something like that? I can't remember what.
The GX 130C. It's a budget version of like that Ampeg that a lot of death metal got, that the VH 140C. Because Crate and Ampeg were owned. I'm all checked out on this shit. They were both owned by the same, you know, like umbrella company, whatever. I can't remember the name of it, but like they kind of treated Crate almost like a Squier to Fender at that time. So like Ampeg had the VH 140C, and then they had the tube one, the VL whatever, which was just kind of like a tube version and had like that weird little lock on the front of it. But Crate had just cheaper versions of both of those amps. The Crate one I think was called the Stealth. Maybe I have like one buddy that has one and he likes it, but yeah, it's just weird. Just Crate actually ended up putting out other amps of like like lower wattages. Like I had the 60-watt version of that amp for a little while.
My first full stack. I mean, this is when I was a fucking like youngster. My first one was that it was like a $20 crate, had the GX 1200H or something like that. And it was so small that it fit inside of like a regular like rack, like a 12 rack or whatever. So I'd put it in there and I'd run a BBE Sonic Maximizer with it. And for the time, it sounded like pretty fucking awesome, to the point where like when it was ducked back in that rack, you couldn't really see what it was. So I'd have like a lot of people like after the show come and ask like, "Whoa, dude, what are you running for?" And then I'd tell them it was a crate, and they'd immediately be like, "Oh, what the fuck?" It's terrible. It probably honestly was, but I don't know.
I hope that was literally what they said too, because I would just
remember a dude saying, "Dude, the guitar sounded awesome, man. What are you running through?" And then I showed him in the rack like that little head sitting there with the BBE Sonic Maximizer, and he was like, "Oh, what the fuck?" Which I understand. I do understand. But you know, fun about those old days. But yeah, you get some Mesa Boogie stuff, and it's just like, all right, fuck anything else. This is where I'm at.
You know what I would just love to do if I were to tour in a band and actually had like a rack of like really cool gear, is just get like a big printout of like a setup like you're talking about, like with the BBE and a crate, and just put that in front of it so people just think like, oh, that crate sounds just like a Mesa dual rectifier.
Well, I don't know. Do you follow that Rigs of Shit Instagram? I don't know if they're still on Instagram, but god damn, there's some there. It's like it'll be like, you know, 4 line 6 combos like stacked on each other, like somehow jerry rigged to all work in unison or some shit like that. I don't know. That's
I have seen those. There's actually been some submissions that we've shared on our page that people comment tagging Rigs of Shit. Like it's like, oh, well, like be nice.
Nice. I mean, dude, there's a fine. You can take a high dollar fucking amp and tweak it wrong, and it's gonna sound like dog shit. So there's like, and vice versa. You could take really low quality. Dimebag is the perfect example. Who in their right mind would ever think that arguably one of the best guitar players in the world for heavy music would be playing solid state Randalls most of his life? And then you look at what's happening now, and like, since everybody's doing the profiler thing, okay, that's all solid state too. So it's like, you know, there's no hard rules written in stone, and it's kind of, I guess the cool, fun thing about art and music is that, like, you know, you just take what you got and make it work for you. So it is kind of cool. Like, some of those Rigs of Shit are like super fun, and like it's just part of I guess what this is all about, I think.
One of the few areas in like extreme metal, because so many guys like just scour forums and go on YouTube, and they just want to get what, I don't know, like 5150 into Mesa 412 with the TS9, and that's fine and all. It's just, it gets kind of monotonous. But sometimes you'll find something that's super refreshing. Like one of my favorite slam bands is Devourment, and their guitar play. There's like a rig rundown with their guitar player, and he had this. It was an 8-string Dean ML. He's like, yeah, I only played the bottom 3 strings. I don't even need the other ones, and it's like all rusted out looking. And for his amp, you remember the Line 6 Axis, like their first combo? Yeah, he had somebody convert one into a head shell for him, and and you know, just runs a couple cabs out of that thing, and he's like, yeah, I like the gate. He's like, it's like my favorite noise gate.
Especially as you get into like the heavier stuff, there really, there's no rules. I mean, and I feel like too, like people's ears play tricks. It's like you're conditioned to think a certain like what you were saying, like 5150 into the Mesa cab with this boost, all the same. Like, yes, that shit sounds awesome, but you're kind of conditioned into thinking that's like the way to go. But there's plenty of I hate to keep bringing it up, but Dimebag is the fucking perfect example. It's just like he used some weird ass fucking shit. So I mean, he sounded fucking amazing and made it work for him. Changed the fucking world. So there's no, I think even today, if you like, if you look at the proliferation of all these modelers, like if you could somehow go back in time, there would be a time where like trying to convince someone that that's a cool, acceptable way to go, people would be like, fuck no, you gotta have a tube amp. I mean, even still today, I'm kind of a little bit like that, but like I've heard plenty of bands with those modelers that sound crushing live. So there's no rules, and I think the fun is just experimenting. And when you do go to a show or whatever and see somebody playing weird gear, it kind of makes it fucking exciting. Like, all right, let's hear this. Let's see what this is gonna sound like.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, weird gear. I'm at the point now, especially since doing this page, I love anything that's out of the ordinary or a little weird. Like, same with guitars. Like a gloss black, guitar does like almost nothing for me at this point. It's got to have a little bit of flash, and I don't know. I'm just jaded, I guess, but
no, I mean, like what you do, you're kind of like, you're swimming in it all the time. So I could totally imagine like after a while, you're just like, all right, let me just please see something different. I can totally understand that.
Yeah. It when somebody sends me something like oddball, like they've souped up a Telecaster and they run it through a Music Man amp and they just use pedals for their high gain, and like, yeah, it's not typical, death metal amp, but it works for
I
me.
think it's like, awesome.
Dude, that's awesome.
One of the heaviest sounds I've heard live was and it could have, I'm sure it had to do with like the bass as well. But that band Young Widows, I want to say the dude was playing I want to say he was playing maybe a Telecaster or some guitar you would not associate as being a heavy guitar, and then like Fender combos. I'm pretty sure it was like, this is way back in the day, but Fender combo stuff. I want to say he had like an extra cab to kind of boost the sound a bit, but and he was probably had pedals there on his board to kind of act as the gain, but it sounded fucking enormous. And so just like what we've been saying, there's no fucking rules, and it's cool when somebody comes along and has weird ass shit. They're making it special. So
yeah,
fun.
Man, thank you for reminding me about that band. My old band opened up for them like years ago. They're super cool band. I forget about them sometimes.
Did you ever listen to that band Breathe or Resist?
Wait, yes, I have.
Like that glory day of like, maybe it's just our city. We don't really have like a bona fide music venue that's dedicated to just that anymore. So like, back when we did, I just remember being able to see so many just awesome shows, like, and you got close enough or whatever to kind of see the gear that was, and actually hear the gear like, along with the PA. It wasn't like some huge fucking place where you're just hearing it come through the PA. Stuff like that is like super exciting. I guess as a person who's into gear or music or whatever, but yeah.
Right. Well, kind of switching gears from gear a little bit, and kind of like what I did there.
Yeah.
And we're kind of focusing on you as a player a little bit. Who would you say like really got you started playing? Like who's your first kind of inspiration to want to get into music?
Like a famous person or just a person?
Either.
Oh man, I don't think it was a famous person that made me want to. Well, shit, that's not necessarily true. In reality, the reason why I started playing guitar is because my two best friends at the time, for whatever reason, we all just decided, yo, like we're gonna get instruments and we're gonna learn how to play these instruments together. I don't know why that was the decision, but I think they were like, you know, somebody's dad had like an acoustic around, so we'd like play around on that, and we'd all take turns, and it's like, well, why don't we just, like, since we enjoy doing this, why don't we just get our own? And so those are the guys that I guess influenced me to like become a musician in the first place. But I remember before any of that, when I was very young, I remember that Guns N' Roses video where Slash, like, you know, he's like there's like the helicopter shot of him, and he's out in front of the chapel, and he just ripped fucking solo. What was that? November Rain.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that and just being like, I think I asked my dad, like, is that guy's job? Like, is that what like, how the fuck do I do that? Because that looks fun as shit. Yeah, I guess I still love Slash, but I guess those two, like the combination of those two things, like really honestly, it was my two best friends that were. It's like, all right, we're gonna do this, and since that, I was like 12 years old at the time, and since that point, I've like been, you know, playing every day, all the time. So.
Oh yeah. What would you say your musical goals would be, both like personally and then with E as Legend?
Personally, just like most other people, try to get better all the time. What's cool about guitar is, like I said, I've been playing since I was 12 years old. I'm 40 now, and I am still learning stuff. I feel like I could live, you know, 10 lifetimes, and there's still stuff to learn about guitar and music. That just keeps it really fucking exciting. So yeah, personal goal would just be get better as time passes, acquire more knowledge, and then with He Is Legend, I would like to, you know, continue trying to be the best, you know, songwriter that I can, trying to keep like pushing myself to do. I feel like I still have this vision of like every time we release an album, I'm still like, it's not like the recipe is still there. There's something more that I could do, if that makes sense. Like I've never released an album where it's like, all right, that's it. That's the best I'll ever do, and that I'm done now. So, and then I guess just on a like business level, you know, it would be awesome because we've been doing the He Is Legend thing I've been playing with these guys since I was 17 years old. So it's pretty much a brotherhood now. And so I'd like to kind of just see it develop into something more, just take it to that next level, I guess. You know, it would be awesome to see that happen. But I'm also satisfied. I feel fortunate and privileged to be able to do it at any capacity. But yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess.
Oh yeah. I can't remember now. Did we get to go over where you draw inspiration for your riffing and songwriting and everything?
Players, like my top 3 like heavy players are Dimebag, Steph from the Deftones, and Frederick from Mojotone,
Right.
and then clean wise, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh, we did tone inspiration. That's what. Well, I mean,
Well, like,
if it's the
writing
same either
wise would
way.
just be like this crazy fucking list of just like, good God, there's so much awesome music out there. There's just like, I mean, from like, you know, I guess more classic rock stuff to the stuff that's coming out now. There's just like literally, I mean, a pages long list of like stuff that influences me. Like, it would just be impossible to pin it down to just like a smaller list. I guess those players that I was just talking about is kind of like, those are the big ones for me. But then like around that, like, is just, you know, I mean, just think about how much, you're probably the same way. Like, think about if I asked you to like, what influences you, it would be like, oh my God, like from the fucking 60s through now, there's like so many fucking bands that are awesome, so many musicians that are just awesome.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just, I adore music. It's a life-saving, magical thing. So it's cool to be able to talk with someone that appreciates it, like yourself.
Oh, well, thank you. I would imagine it'd be especially difficult to pinpoint influences for like the He Is Legend stuff, because it's such a versatile band. You guys cover such a wide gambit of tones and sounds that it's, I mean, it's you know, it's not as proggy and out of left field as something like, you know, BT Band, where they're literally genre bending, but within staying in the confines of a, you know, your all sound. It's a pretty broad spectrum.
For saying that, dude. I feel like that comes from what I was saying earlier, where it's like, we've been playing together since we were like 16, 17-year-old kids. So even if you take from the very earliest moment that, like, I guess the masses of people heard us, like, there's still so much more music before that we were like experimenting with all different kinds of things. So there was never a moment where it was like we sat down and we were like, we're going to form this band and we're going to sound like this. It's literally always been a fucking just like, let's have fun with this and not worry about what we are. Which is probably not a good idea. You should probably decide at some point, but it doesn't, I don't know. It keeps it fun. Like, I feel like when, like, obviously our music is probably not geared towards something that's like super mainstream digestible, but I feel like when all of this is said and done and we look back at what we've done, it might, you know, mean a little more like, oh shit, we did some kind of unique, we kind of carved our own little path, and so that'll be something to be proud of, even if, you know, we're not the biggest mega band in the world or whatnot.
Somebody asked a pretty decent question that was sort of in the same ballpark. Are there any boundaries for specifically He Is Legend? Well, it's like, we're pretty open, but we're not going to do like this kind of thing. Like, I don't know, maybe like no banjo rolls and He Is Legend, or, you know, stuff like that.
I think that would just come down to like the individual players in the band. Like, you know, everybody's kind of got like, well, I really don't want to play like that. And so it's like, kind of like, that's, when I listen to Deftones, one of the things that I like about them so much is like, you can kind of tell that guitar player is coming from a more heavy metal background, but then the drummer's on some different shit, the singer's on some different shit, the bass player's on, you know, so it's like, but the melding together of, you know, they sound like something really unique as opposed to like a band, which I love these bands too, where it's like everybody's playing heavy metal style stuff. I love that, but it's like, it's really fun to listen to a band where you can kind of tell everybody's coming from a different place. So I think the only thing that would, like, for us to say, no, I'm not, or we're not going to do that, it wouldn't be a conscious thing. It would literally just be like I know my drummer's not going to want to play like super heavy metal drum stuff, but he's totally fine with me playing like, you know, a more metal inspired riff, and then he's going to do something different over that. And then Skylar's going to totally, like, you know, if you've listened to any of our stuff, regardless of, excuse me, how heavy we get, Skylar doesn't do the typical like heavy metal vocalist thing, and we like that. Like, we like that everybody's kind of coming from a different place. You ever heard of An Exquisite Corpse? I don't even know if that's the fucking name for it, but I think I was told. But it's this thing we used to do on tour in the van to pass the time. But you take a sheet of paper and you fold it like an envelope, like the 3-fold deal, like you're going to put it in an envelope. And so the first person will, you got to have like, you know, a few people in on this, but the first person will take the like top half, that top segment, and they'll draw whatever the hell they want, making sure that part of their drawing kind of like seeps down right over the first fold. Okay. So then they fold that. So the second person can't see what they've done. They can only see like, oh, I see how a little bit of it comes into the fold, and then you hand it to that second person. They take what you, like your tiny little, like a few lines that have come down or whatever the hell, and they will like expound on that, making sure that their part seeps over a little bit into that third, and then you hand it to the third person, and they you know, finish it out, and then you unfold that shit, some weird ass piece of art. And I feel like that's kind of what our music feels like to me, is like, especially in the, you know, earlier days where it would literally just be me and a drummer and our bass player and singer kind of hashing shit out, and nobody really knows what's going to happen when we get into the studio. I'm going to layer stuff that they've never heard before, and you know, Skylar's going to do some vocal stuff that nobody's heard, so it kind of becomes this like just weirdo experiment. And like, sometimes it probably doesn't work out so well, but sometimes it's like really, really cool what comes out. So.
That's such a good analogy too, by the way, with the game and everything. I never heard of that. It sounds fun though.
It takes nothing, sheet of paper and a pencil or pen and some.
Hell yeah. Well, we'll shift gears a little bit back to gear. Is there we know what you've been rocking for the longest time, so it's clear like some things are definitely working for you. Is there anything currently with what you're playing through that like maybe there's a specific issue you're trying to solve? Like maybe you're wanting to look into, like, I don't know, maybe MIDI switching, or maybe you're looking for a solution to some sort of musical problem, or maybe there's just a fun piece of gear you're looking at. Anything like that?
I definitely think so, but I think it's not a matter of like, oh, we can't do this. It's a matter of like, I would want to be able to have like a crew and a personal tech to be able to like venture into some of these spaces that I'm thinking of. And what I mean by that is like having like a professional switching system, so I'm not having to do as much tap dancing. But when you start introducing that much cabling and like all the like I said before, like, you know, sometimes my rack is not even accessible to me when I'm on stage. It's like ducked back in some corner. So if anything were to go wrong, we would literally have to stop the set, like move some gear. I would personally have to go back in there and like switch it around. So it's like,
right.
But I think that would be the thing that I would want to like take to the next level if we get to that point, is just having like a full MIDI switching rig, like whether or not everything is in the rack and I've got a MIDI foot switch out on stage, or whether it's like, you know, you've seen like the pedal boards where everything's still on the pedal board, but there's a like main switching system for that, like right under it. Some sort of situation like that, but it's not something I feel comfortable doing. It's not even realistic to do without like some sort of somebody there to like make sure. There's just no way to troubleshoot that shit without a tech. If anything were to go wrong mid set, it would just be like, all right, thanks for coming out. We're gonna try to figure out it'd be like a, you know, old school operator, like just trying different shit out. It's like, all right, this is not realistic. So that would probably be the thing, I guess. How about you? What would you change?
Well, I think the desire to have that kind of versatility and not having to worry about, you know, switching shit out, like being able to press one button with your foot and change several different parameters. I think just about anybody would agree that they would rather have that than do the tap dance. Like I said, I'm running the Kemper now. Like when I go jam with buddies and stuff like that, I haven't played a real gig in a couple of years. I'm mostly just recording and doing demos for the channel and stuff these days. But yeah, like the Kemper is a good solution for me. Like just that and the remote probably, just for ease. But if I could have my way, it would be the big, you know, refrigerator rack. And yeah, I at most or at best probably like a hybrid rig. Like I've seen people with tube head and then either using a Helix or Axe effects for effect, like kind of really as like a brain for their entire rig.
Have you ever seen the rigs that Dave Friedman will design and build for like super pro dudes? Like Justin Derrico has one built by Dave Friedman that is he's the guitar player for Pink, and he's like a session dude, amazing guitar player, but he has this rig that just like I fucking drool over. It's like it's two Bogners in a super big ass you know, head case.
Oh, kind of cut out on me there.
Fucking phone's about to die, but
oh, okay.
Well, that's a good thing. That means we fucking must have done some work. But yeah, just super professional design. Like, if you look that up on YouTube, it's Justin Derrico, Dave Friedman rig, and he kind of like demos out some of the shit on there. But it is just so professional. So everything is like thought of and like right angled and just like it's just badass. But yeah, that would be a fucking dream. I'm like you. I'm like love the days of those 80s refrigerator racks where people were putting too much shit. It's sick, man. It's badass when your gear looks like a spaceship.
Oh yeah, like I've seen so many of like the Bob Bradshaw designed rigs and stuff for any big name you can think of, and they always look so cool. And really, those rigs are really the best of both worlds. You have the versatile equipment, like all these different, you know, you've handpicked every component of it yourself. Like it's your favorite delays, your favorite overdrives, favorite tube amp, and it's all the real deal. But you have the ease of use of like the MIDI switching and everything's all tucked away.
I mean, another benefit of those rigs is like, so now with the system, the 4 cable method that I'm using, you know, I've got 50 extra feet of cabling between, you know, like from the send and return of my effects loop. And rigs like that where the pedals are all living inside the rack, you've got such a short amount of cable length, so that the tone is like super pristine. It's just on every level. It's like sick as shit. But maybe I think my phone's gonna die soon, so maybe we should. I don't want to like put on you.
Sure.
Maybe we could wrap her.
Sounds good, man. We'll wrap it up with real quick. Top 4 bands and or albums.
Oh, fuck. Top 4?
Yeah.
Far Beyond Driven, Chaos Fear Meshuggah, Around the Fur, or maybe Diamond Eyes, but probably Around the Fur from Deftones. I need a 4. Oh, Hysteria, Def Leppard. Man, I can't do a top 4, but that's my top 4 right in my head. Fucking love.
Works for me, man. It's the first time we've had Def Leppard in our top 4 on any of these, so I'll take it.
Y'all need to stop sleeping on. All right.
Hell yeah, man. Well, Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been great. I love talking about gear shit, and it's usually interviews and not about this stuff, so it's a pleasure for me too.
Hell yeah, glad to hear that. Everybody, go check out He Is Legend. Keep up with everything that they have. You guys, I'm sure, are on all social media. So all right. Thank you again. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
Have a good one.
Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks again, Adam.